Hi, John and friends. Happy birthday, John. It's a couple days late, but that's okay. We did get your card out in the mail on time this time. We are in the book of Ruth today. There's just a 4-chapter book, and I hope you've already read it because it's a really amazing love story. It's a love story about a foreigner that comes back with an Israelite woman, her mother-in-law, and she comes back into the land. And God provides for her and introduces her to a man named Boaz. And Boaz is he's a picture of Christ himself in the way that he acts and deals with both Ruth and Naomi. Naomi being the mother-in-law of Ruth. Naomi had it tough. She just 10 years earlier she went up to Moab with her husband and her 2 sons to escape from this famine that was in Israel. She went up to Moab, and the sons got married to 2 girls, Ruth and Orpah, and she loses her husband and the sons. They all die, and she's left with her daughter-in-law, so she just decides she's going to go back to Israel, and she does. Orpah decides to stay back, but Ruth says, no, I'm not going to leave you. I will be with you and be where you are. I will die where you die. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. And that's just like the most beautiful commitment speech right there. And it came right from her heart. It wasn't something memorized or pre-thought out. She knew. She loved her mother-in-law. She wanted to be there with her. So you got Ruth the Moabitess coming back with Naomi, and Naomi just wants to change her name when she gets back to Israel because she feels like God has punished her. Call me Mara, call me bitter, because God has dealt with me bitterly. I went out full and I came back empty. God is going to do what He's going to do. And we may have seasons of darkness followed by seasons of blessing. Everything is in seasons. Our lives are in seasons. We have things that we go through one by one step at a time. And of course, she's saying, she comes back with Ruth, which is a Moabitess. Now, nobody in Israel would have liked this. Nobody. But Boaz. Boaz, remember, Boaz's mother is Rahab from Jericho. So he's already the son of a foreigner, because he's the son of a lady that was already in Canaan, who was not Israelite. But Boaz being understanding that God has grace for all people and loves all people to bring them in, didn't see her as a Moabitess. He saw her as a beautiful woman. But as soon as he sees her, he's like, who is that? Because, it's funny because you get into chapter 2, and Naomi tells Ruth to go glean in a field, go work in a field, because according to the law that we studied back in the books of Moses, that if you were a foreigner, you could go into a harvesting area and follow behind the reapers to collect grain if you were a widow or a foreigner or poor. And it looks like all 3 of them were in play at this point, with Naomi being a widow or poor, and Ruth being a foreigner. And by divine appointment, Ruth happens to end up in the field of Boaz. And Boaz is a kinsman redeemer, a near kinsman of the family. He's a distant relative, but he's close enough to where he can redeem the land that was Naomi's. Basically redeem Naomi and Ruth, because their husbands have died. So he has that ability to go ahead and take claim of them. Remember we talked about the sandal being removed. You see that in the book of Ruth. You talked about land purchasing and land rights going from one person to another. The whole book of Ruth really helps when you want to understand the book of Revelation later on. When we understand the title deed of the land is in play. The land is the whole world. And how Jesus, the Lamb, is capable, the only one able to take the land, take that title deed, and break the seals, because it's His now. Through His death, He purchased the world back from the enemy, purchased us back, and He will return to go ahead and redeem us all through the death of sin and wickedness and destruction. All of those things are going to go away, and He's going to bring a new heaven and a new earth, and it's going to be awesome. All that's in Revelation, of course, but you understand that more when you understand the book of Ruth. And it's such a beautiful book because she knows that, Ruth knows that doesn't know a lot. She only knows what her mother tells her. And it's an excellent picture of the church and Israel and Jesus. Boaz being a picture. Remember, these are all real people. This is all real stuff, all real events, and it'd be a beautiful movie. They really would. A beautiful picture in front of us to see. And of course, so we see Ruth as being the church, the Gentile brought in. She's the Moabite brought into the flock, and Naomi, who is Israel. And Boaz is a picture of Jesus. But Ruth has to go to Boaz to ask. She goes to lay at his feet and go, redeem me. It's on her to go to him to say, redeem me. And he does. He says, yes, I will. And he gives her 6 measures of barley to go show Naomi. And Naomi understands that 6 is right before perfection, right before rest, right before completion, I should say. 7 is the number of completion. On the 7th day, God rested. So by giving her 6 measures of barley, he was basically telling Naomi, I'm not going to rest until you're redeemed, until you're taken care of. And even right now, he is not resting. He is at work, redeeming every last one of the people that he has called to be in his fold for eternity. He is out there working through us. And that's a big thing for us, is to remember that we are called according to his purpose for our lives, his divine plan for us. We see all of that in here. You see that according to the people, she was just Ruth the Moabitess, Ruth the foreigner. It won't have anything to do with her. But according to Boaz, she was beautiful. She was a servant. Ruth is a servant, but she is much more than that. He wants her as a wife. Basically, I want to not just take the land, I'm going to marry you so that I can redeem you, but it was love at first sight, right? But it pretty much looks like that. I've labeled the chapters actually in here. You can kind of just I love this book so much. It's so good. We went over this book. Oh gosh, I went over this book with John, my best friend, about 15 years ago when we were in high school. We just drove out to the airport. I tried to get to an airport today, but the weather and kids and everything, it's hard to get around sometimes when you need to. Chapter 1 talks about Ruth's sorrow, being separated from her husband who had died and wanting to cling on to Naomi and follow her and go with her and be with her. And then chapter 2 is about Ruth's service, Ruth being willing to go in and humbling herself and going into Boaz's field and working the harvest, working the fields, You follow God's law of reaping in there. Then 3, of course, is Ruth's surrender, just like all of us. We are supposed to surrender ourselves before him, bow down before him and say, Lord, redeem me. You've already redeemed me, but you're constantly sanctifying me daily to be more like you. And then, of course, Ruth's satisfaction in the end, where she has children who end up, Boaz and Ruth have Obed. And Obed is the father of Jesse. And Jesse is the father of David, who will be king of Israel. We'll get into that as we get into Samuel, which is where we should be by now. We're going to catch up. I know we are, because there's a lot coming with the kings, and it's just interesting stuff. And it's an amazing book, and you just got to read it over and over again to see how many things that you can learn, because it's all there. It's a good picture of how God loves his people and how he has called us, and how he uses Israel, because Jesus is, of course, Jewish. and all of these things that we learn about in the Old Testament are for us to learn today. And it's so vital to our understanding in life, John. And I love that even though you step away from the Bible for a couple of days, you get back into it and it just feels like you're just there again. It's like when you turn, you can't say the radio, but when you turn off a CD in your car and it stops at a song, important point. And then you get back in later, you turn it back on, it starts up again right where you left off. That's the kind of relationship he has with us. You don't have to sit there with God in your prayers and reiterate all the things that you've missed, because he hasn't missed anything. He's been with you every step of the way. Even if you have turned your focus this way or that, he's still there. In fact, he's not just that. He's your binoculars that you're supposed to be looking through. His word is supposed to be your glasses that you look through and listen to his voice as he calls you by name every day to do what he has called you to do. So that is the book of Ruth. It's an amazing book. We'll continue on in the study as we go. Thank you.